Good morning. Well, it's morning here. It might be evening where you're at. In fact, I'm doing this video very, very early. I am actually still in my PJs, which I don't know, you probably can't tell I'm in my PJs, but I am. Sometimes I get inspired to do these videos before I do anything else. And when that's the case, I'm usually in this purple, or I have an orange one too, orange thing that I wear over my PJs. So this morning is one of those mornings before I go for my walk, before I work out, before I get dressed. The only thing I've done this morning is my contemplation. I haven't even meditated yet. But I felt to jump right in with you. So here I am. So good morning. So we've been looking at NTI 1 Peter, and you've been listening to my teachings. So it doesn't feel like I need to go over a lot of what is in NTI 1 Peter, but I'm inspired to re-emphasize a couple of things. And so that's what I'm here for today, is re-emphasizing. I'm going to start with NTI 1 Peter chapter 2. I'm reading the first two paragraphs. In truth, you can rid yourself of nothing, for there is nothing to be rid of. You are pure and perfect and in communication now. Nothing has ever failed or gone wrong. This is what I really want to emphasize. Nothing has ever failed or gone wrong. It is perfect. It is perfect as you are. If something seems to have gone wrong or seems to be less than perfect, you are seen through a veil of misperception. It is only this veil that must be lifted, so you can see that it is all perfect, and it has always been. So I wanted to let you know that, of course, once upon a time, I definitely did not see everything as perfect. But I saw a lot of things wrong with me and a lot of things wrong with the world. But there was a time when a shift occurred, and I want to tell you about that shift. The shift occurred while I was on vacation. I was in Yellowstone National Park. I think this was probably September of 2019. And right now, as I'm recording this, it's January of 2022. So it would have been about a year and a half ago. I went on vacation to Yellowstone with my mom and a couple of friends. And, the vacation weather wasn't the way one would dream. You dream of sunny days and all of that. And we had a little bit of sun, but there was a lot of cold, rainy days. I think we might have even experienced a little bit of wet snow. So it was cold and wet. And what I remember thinking during that vacation is just how perfect that vacation was. It was just perfect. And I even remember thinking that this was a little odd, and it was so cold and wet, thinking that it was so perfect. Because usually I'm a sunshine lover. Usually I'd want it to be sunshiny, and I would think that a cold, wet week at Yellowstone was not the best. And yet I just thought this was perfect. And I thought that was a little odd. But I also thought it was just because I was on vacation. I thought I was in vacation mode and just loving being on vacation. But what was really interesting was I came back from vacation, and that way of seeing continued. I saw everything as perfect, even things that I knew intellectually I would not have seen as perfect before. Just like I wouldn't see a wet, rainy vacation as perfect. There are even some things that have happened since then that I would have perceived before as, oh my God, my entire life is falling apart. And I don't see it that way. I see it as perfect. So this seen as perfect has persisted. And that's what I wanted to tell you, because this is what NTI First Peter is talking about. It says, nothing has ever failed or gone wrong. It is perfect as you are. And I just wanted to let you know that this is true. And this isn't something you have to make up or lie to yourself about. If you just keep going forward with the practices, this shift will occur. It just happens on its own. And then you'll see that it's true, and it's always been true, just like it says here. It is only this veil of misperception. It is only this veil that must be lifted, so you can see that it is all perfect, and it has always been. So, someone might ask, well, what did you do to make this scene happen for you? Let me read something to you from NTI Luke chapter 13 before I answer that question, shall I? This is on page 156, underneath verses 18 to 21. It's the second paragraph. One comes to know the peace and joy of God by listening to me, as a small child who is eager to learn listens to a parent. One comes to know the peace and joy of God by listening to me, as a small child who is eager to learn listens to a parent. And then, just as that child does, by trying everything the parent asks it to try. But if you watch a child when it is learning something new, you will notice that the learning itself does not seem to come from the child's effort. The practice is but an expression of the child's willingness to learn. The learning itself seems to come upon the child like a miracle. And suddenly the small child can do what it could not do before. When we just read from NTI First Peter, it said, you are pure and perfect and in communication now. In communication now. When we were reading NTI Hebrews chapter 13, it talked about faith. In fact, let me just flip back to that. Hebrews 13. And read a little of that to you. Oh, no, sorry, Hebrews 11, forgive me. Hebrews 11. Faith is driven by desire and powered by belief, or what you accept is true. One may say he has faith, but if he does not accept as true, his faith has no meaning at all. So let's take this idea that the world is perfect as it is, that you are perfect as you are, that everything is perfect as it is. It doesn't mean that you see that way right now. It just means that you have a desire to see that way, and you accept that that's true. That's what faith is. Even if you're not experiencing it right now, you have a desire to see that way, and you accept that that is a truth. So that means that you have faith that everything is perfect. It says one may say he has faith, but if he does not accept as true, his faith has no meaning at all, right? So again, you accept that's a truth, even if it's not your direct experience. That's what faith is. It goes on to say that by faith, your entire perception shall seem to change in answer to the faith you have given. So I had faith that everything was perfect. And then while on vacation at Yellowstone, my perception changed to show me what I had faith in. I had faith in that truth way before, years before I experienced it. And how did I express that faith? Well, oops, I started to put this down, but I actually just want to go back to Luke chapter 13. One comes to know the peace and joy of God by listening to me, as a small child who is eager to learn listens to a parent. So first of all, I listened to inner wisdom and external right-minded teachings, like the books that I was guided to read and contemplate, for example. So that's the first thing I did. I listened. That was an expression of my faith, listening. And then, just as that child does, right? One comes to know the peace and joy of God by listening to me. And then, just as that child does, by trying everything the parent asks it to try. That means the spiritual practice, like the walkabout practices in 500 days, right? As I was guided to do different practices, mind watching, letting go, rest, accept, and trust, contemplation, meditation, et cetera, I did all of that to the best of my ability. So my faith was expressed by listening or reading right-minded teachings and listening to inner wisdom. And then by practicing everything I was asked to practice. Let's listen again to this paragraph. One comes to know the peace and joy of God by listening to me, as a small child who is eager to learn listens to a parent. And then, just as that child does, by trying everything the parent asks it to try. But then listen to this. But if you watch a child when it is learning something new, you will notice that the learning itself does not seem to come from the child's effort. The practice is but an expression of the child's willingness to learn. Or the practice is but an expression of our faith. The fact that we practice spiritual practices means that we accept spiritual teachings as true. If we didn't accept them as true, we wouldn't practice them, would we? So the practice is an expression of our faith. And then as NTI 1 Peter chapter 2 said, we're perfect now. We're in communication now with all of consciousness. So as we step forward practicing, it's not our effort that brings about the change in perception. It's not our effort that brings about awakening. It's actually our faith, our true faith. We aren't just saying I have faith in these truth teachings. We actually do. How do we know that? Because we're practicing. You see? If we were just saying it, we could talk about spirituality all the time. People do this. And if we're saying it, but not practicing it, it means we don't actually have faith in it, right? I'm more focused on the world because that's what I have faith in. But if I'm focused on contemplation, meditation, and these walkabout exercises, I must have faith in that. So as I'm doing spiritual practice, here's what's happening. As I'm doing spiritual practice, I am communicating with consciousness, saying, I want to experience the truth. That's what's happening. I am in communication now. So as I do the practices, I'm communicating with consciousness, and consciousness responds by changing my mind, by changing my perception, by changing my experience. So it's not the effort of the practice. It's the faith and willingness that the practice is an expression of. One comes to know the peace and joy of God by listening to me, as a small child who is eager to learn listens to a parent. And then, just as that child does, by trying everything the parent asks it to try. But if you watch a child when it is learning something new, you will notice that the learning itself does not seem to come from the child's effort. The practice is but an expression of the child's willingness to learn. The learning itself seems to come upon the child like a miracle, and suddenly the small child can do what it could not do before. Or in the case of my story, after years of practicing what I had been guided to practice, suddenly the veil was lifted and I saw that everything is perfect just as it is. Everyone is perfect just as it is. This body, this personality is perfect just as it is. So again, from NTI, Hebrews chapter 11, faith is driven by desire and powered by belief, which is defined here as what you accept as true. One may say he has faith, but if he does not accept as true, his faith has no meaning at all. Right? And it's through faith that your perception is changed. It's through faith that you are communicating with consciousness. It's through faith that you are drawing everything to you. One of the things I had faith in prior to the Yellowstone experience was the loving all method. And so one of the things I practiced throughout the day was the loving all method. Let me just review a little bit of that with you. This is the loving all method. The loving all method can be summed up as follows. Love everything you perceive exactly the way it is. Love everything you experience exactly the way it is. Love every thought you have exactly the way it is. Love those thoughts you think are good exactly the way they are. Love those thoughts you think are bad exactly the way they are. Love all your emotions exactly the way they are. I'll scroll down a little bit to number 16. Love your body exactly the way it is. Love the objects you see exactly the way they are. Love the people you see exactly the way they are. Love your actions exactly the way they are. Love everything you feel, think, say, or do exactly the way it is. Love everything you see, taste, touch, smell, or hear exactly the way it is. Love everything other people do, feel, think, or say exactly the way it is. Number 27, if something nice happens during your day, love it exactly the way it is. If something horrible happens during your day, love it exactly the way it is. Right? Love everything exactly the way it is. So I practiced this. One of the ways I practiced this 4 years was the prayer at dinner. I think I might have shared this with you before. Before dinner, I would say, Holy Spirit, thank you so very much for everything. And as I said, for everything, I scanned my mind for everything that had happened throughout the day, both what the mind would call good or bad. And I brought it all into my heart with gratitude. Holy Spirit, thank you so very much for everything. Amen. very brief, but very powerful, because it was done with faith, with desire, and with acceptance that the truth is true. And of course, it's really nice to be aware of the further clarification of the loving all method. Because if you don't feel like you can love everything exactly as it is, you don't want to be dishonest with yourself. You always need to feel honest in what you're doing. Right? We saw before that self-honesty is a very important key. So if you can't love everything exactly as it is, then it says in number 33, you can substitute the words emotionally allow for the word love in the above instructions. So the way that you practice with faith, if you can't love it, is you just emotionally allow it, which means allow your emotions about it. This is the superconductor process. If you can, accept it. Sometimes what you can't love, you can accept. That's number 34. So you just say, it is as it is. This situation is as it is. She is as she is. I am as I am. My weight is as my weight is. Or if you can love it as it is, love it. So again, you have three choices. You love everything as it is. If you can't love it, you just accept it. It is as it is. NTI Romans says that's the only honest judgment we can ever make. It is as it is. And if you can't love it, you can't accept it, emotionally allow it. Practice the superconductor process with it. You can always do one of the three. And by doing one of the three, you are practicing as the parent, or in this case, the Holy Spirit or the spiritual wisdom asks us to. So you're living your faith. And through living your faith, you are communicating with consciousness. And at some point, like a miracle, your perception will be changed. And you will see that everything is perfect, including this body, mind, personality. Your body, mind, personality. And it always has been perfect. So let's look ahead. This week, we will be, first of all, finishing the loving consciousness meditation. We'll do Z again, which is the last loving consciousness meditation on day 432. So on day 433, we will begin awareness, watching, awareness. Now, awareness, watching, awareness is extremely similar. You'll be doing the same thing. You'll be listening to audios, which will give instructions about every 10 minutes, right? So it's very, very similar. In fact, both loving consciousness and awareness, watching, awareness come from Michael Langford. The only difference is awareness, watching, awareness doesn't have the emphasis on loving awareness. You pay attention to it, but it doesn't have the emphasis on loving it. I just want to say that if loving consciousness really worked for you, then during awareness, watching, awareness, please feel free to love awareness. You don't have to throw the love out. But if you found the loving part to be strenuous for you, well, then the good news is awareness, watching, awareness doesn't require or request the love. It only requests paying attention. So the loving is optional as we move into awareness, watching, awareness. Let me share my screen again. I want to show you something. I'm going to shift from the website I'm on now, which by the way was, I don't know how to say it, albigen.com. And I'm going to shift over to Awakening Together. And I'm going to look under AT audios, which is where meditation audios are right now. And as I mentioned, both loving consciousness and awareness, watching awareness are Michael Langford methods. I'm going to go into the awareness, watching awareness. Now you'll have direct links to these meditations in your practice instructions, but I want to show you when we go into the very first description, description A, I want to show you that you're going to find that you have two options: practice instruction description A with tip 1, or practice instruction description A with tip 1 with music. This one, of course, has no music, and the entire audio is 30 minutes long. This one has music, and the entire audio is closer to an hour.
Relax as much as you can relax during.
All right. So you'll have a choice as to which one you want to do. Either case, you can set your timer for as long as you want to meditate. So if you're meditating for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, you can go ahead and set your timer for that. But I wanted to let you know, one does not have music, one does. If you're meditating for longer than an hour, you might prefer the one without music, because the one with music will go for an hour and then the music will stop. And that might be noticeable in your meditation. It might be like a little disturbance, maybe. So if you do the one without music, there's no music to stop, right? So, the last description will be read, and then there'll be the typical silence, and the silence just continues. So just a recommendation for you to consider. If you're going to be meditating for an hour or less, either one is okay. But if you're going to be meditating for longer than an hour, consider the one without music. That's what I wanted to share. And so we'll be practicing awareness, watching awareness for a while. Another thing that is coming up this week is we will finish NTI 1 Peter and we'll move into NTI 2 Peter. This weekend, your special assignment will include the remainder of my teachings from NTI 1 Peter, and it will begin my teachings for NTI 2 Peter. So those are the audios. You're going to have very specific walkabout exercises this week, so pay attention to those exercises. Several of the exercises earlier in the week, a part of the exercise is going to be to practice mindfulness with the present moment. Mindfulness just means being aware. And if you want to, we watched about a 15-minute video earlier in the 500 days with Leo, where he talked about mindfulness. You could go watch that video again if you want to refresh your memory. Just search YouTube for actualized.org mindfulness, and the video will show up again. It's only about 15 minutes, so you could review that. But primarily, it just means staying in awareness. You could practice the is happening game when you want to help you stay in awareness. The is happening game is just noticing what's happening. It can be both external and internal, right? Just noticing what's happening and noting it by saying it's happening. So for example, if I'm watching the external world, let's say I'm watching the news, I might say commentating is happening, right? When the guy is talking, commentating is happening. Video is happening when they're showing a video as what is going on. Video is happening. I might perceive anger in the video. So I might say the perception of anger is happening, right? I'm taking responsibility for the fact that I perceive anger out there. The perception of anger is happening. The perception of attack is happening. Now I might be starting to feel some emotions myself. So I tune back into what I'm feeling. Fear is happening. Disappointment is happening. Thoughts that it should be different is happening, right? So you're just watching and noting. That's all you're doing. So feel free to use that exercise to help you stay aware. Again, consider reviewing actualized.org mindfulness video, only 15 minutes. That will help you with the days that you're practicing mindfulness as a part of your walkabout exercise. Let me look at some of these other walkabout exercises. Of course, paying attention to your spiritual aspiration, your spiritual purpose is going to be very important this week, as always. You'll have some exercise showing up where you're going to be noticing when you're looking outside of yourself for happiness, security, love, or a sense of worth, right? When do you think something outside gives that to you? And then you'll be looking back inward to isness, awareness, peace. Once you notice that you were looking out for happiness, security, love, or worth, you'll then turn your attention back inward after you notice that. Oh, and on day 435, a really fun exercise, it's a contrast exercise. You'll notice two things and you'll contrast them. One thing you'll notice, you're going to pay attention to yourself as isness, awareness, peace, while noticing, asking this inquiry, is there a sense of unaffected freedom in being isness, awareness, peace? So you pay attention to yourself as that isness, awareness, peace, and then just notice, is there a sense of unaffected freedom here? And then the other part of that contrast is when you are caught up in the world, whether you're caught up in what you're watching in the news or caught up in what appears to be going on in your life or caught up in your thoughts about your body, your personality. When you're caught up in the world, then you're going to notice that and then see if there is a sense of unaffected freedom in that. So you'll be looking at isness, awareness. Does this have a sense of unaffected freedom? And then looking at being caught up in the world or thought and asking, does this have a sense of unaffected freedom? So that's the week that's coming up. Today is day 429. So I will see you again on day 436. Have a wonderful week with your contemplation, your meditations, your practice, the expressions of your faith. Bye.